Hello everyone and welcome to our continuing coverage of AWS reInvent. Today we have two friends from Commvault. We have Govind and we have our friend Thomas Bryant also who is joining us. So Thomas, let's start with you. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Hi, Christophe. It's great to be here. My name is Thomas Bryant, and I'm a senior director of product marketing. But really, what I do is I spend a lot of time working with customers out in the field to understand what are their needs, what are their desires that they have in regards to data protection and cyber resilience.
Thank you, Thomas. And Govind Rangasamy, you are now with Commvault, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Can you tell us what you do?
Sure, Christophe. So I'm Govind Rangasamy, Head of Recovery Solutions at Commvault. As you know, Appranix was acquired by Commvault about 7 months ago. So as part of the team to educate customers, more customers about the cloud rewind capabilities, we are spending a lot of time with customers to pretty much bring them up to speed about cloud resilience and cyber resilience together.
Excellent, and we have quite a bit to cover, and I do remember meeting you, Govind, a few years ago when you were just launching Appranix, and it was great to see you with the great Commvault team and adding key capabilities to the AWS environment. So let's talk about some of the most recent developments, and I'm really going to focus here on additions in terms of platform coverage. So Thomas here, what do you think is key here that people should know? There were a couple of announcements, more than a couple of announcements actually, at Commvault Shift in October. What should people know about what you now can do with the Commvault platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big piece in being here at reInvent, it's really about expanding our coverage to protect not only more workloads, breadth, but also depth. And so we're bringing our platform, uh, our SaaS platform, into AWS so that customers can leverage it with all of the cloud native capabilities that they're already using in AWS, but also be able to take advantage of our platform natively within that platform. And then we've also made some acquisitions. I know we've talked a little bit about Clumio, and we announced Backtrack as well. So again, we're trying to add more depth to our platform as well, because what we find a lot from customers is that they're really trying to consolidate right now. They're trying to reduce the gaps that they have with multiple data protection platforms. And so that's what we're trying to do, is meet customers where the demand is. And we do that with breadth and depth.
Yes, and really this idea of cyber resilience is very fundamental. That's where the market is now, and actually I'd love to get your perspective on that in a minute, because there's quite a bit going on. You mentioned gaps in coverage, but let's talk about air gapping. I think that's one of the key capabilities, certainly for cyber resilience. What's new on AWS?
Yeah, so we have a technology called Air Gap Protect, and it provides an air gapped set of storage capabilities for customers to leverage. Now, you tend to want to have some level of data gravity where your data protection, your cyber resilience, your backups are close to the data that you're not only protecting, but wanting to recover in the case of an accident, a deletion, or a cyber attack. And so we've brought our Air Gap Protect capabilities to AWS Cloud.
Excellent. So with this, quite a bit of new capabilities with for AWS, I'd like to maybe turn to you, Govind, because from surveys, from research, we know that there are hundreds of applications literally running in most enterprises. Yet when it comes to recovering, things get a little more complex. It's not just the data, it's also the application itself, it's the whole environment. So could we double click on what you have recently brought to the table and how you're integrating and helping AWS customers with what I would loosely coin as near high availability. So talk to us about Rewind.
Absolutely, Christoph. So if you think about what we are seeing in the market with respect to applications running on AWS, customers are not protecting their environments completely, in the sense that the protection has to be overall, all the resources and the application data. So they are not protecting enough from our point of view. When I say they are not protecting enough, it's not from an application data. I mean, application data is being protected in several different ways. For example, Commvault provides one of the best data protection solutions on AWS. We are talking about other resources. And when you think about an application environment, you have network, VPC onwards, and VPC as a service on AWS has hundreds of different sub-services. And you go into other networking components or other PaaS services like the databases or serverless services and containers. So typically an application that runs on AWS tends to utilize all kinds of services and their dependencies that really make up a distributed cloud application. So when I say that, protect the environment properly, I mean all the services along with application data to be able to properly protect and also replicate to another region, to your point of providing that near high availability by utilizing all the on-demand capabilities of AWS. For example, if the region has a problem, you should be able to bring back your application in another region really, really quickly. So that's what we are educating the market with Cloud Rewind capabilities now.
So yeah, and it doesn't happen by pure magic. You have to be able to discover all of the resources. You have to literally focus on mapping everything to limit this operational confusion that could happen in a recovery. So it was great to see some of those components. So we'll come back to you in a minute, Govind. I'd like to talk about what happens in the case of a recovery. And specifically, I'm going to ask you, Thomas, to tell us a little bit more about clean room recovery. We talked about air gapping. The next big thing is clearly what you can do in an environment that is safe. So you can test, recover, and see what's going on so that you don't have a ransomware, for example, executable detonating on you again. So can you walk us through where you're at with clean room recovery and what you see customers do?
Yeah, so we introduced Clean Room Recovery first on Azure, and now we've announced it on AWS as well. And the idea is to provide a safe space to where you can recover data. So if you think back to kind of yesterday, the yesteryear perhaps, a lot of what folks would do is they would either have to buy additional hardware and storage and networking gear, and they'd have to build essentially their own kind of clean room. And that makes it financially unfeasible for most customers. And so what we try to do is democratize that, make it easy for customers to leverage something like a cloud, and give them a place to where it's safe and ransomware free to be able to recover workloads, but more importantly, to test. Because one of the biggest gaps that we see with folks right now is there's this kind of false sense of security with their disaster recovery plans. And in the case of a cyber recovery, you can't really rely or trust the data is clean. And so it really throws a wrench in those disaster recovery plans and incident response plans. And you need to think about, well, if my data is not clean, how do I find out what is clean and still get my revenue engine and get the business back going quickly? And it's difficult for customers. And so this clean room recovery technology really allows anyone to be able to bring any of their workloads. And it also speaks to the power of Commvault Cloud, because one of the things that we're really proud of is that we're built on this kind of any-to-any technology. It allows us to take any data that we're backing up and make it portable. So let's say you've got a SQL server on-prem, but you want to be able to recover that into a clean room in AWS. We handle the transformation. You shouldn't have to worry about all of the extra steps when you're under pressure. You want things to be as automated as possible.
Thank you, Thomas. And automation is exactly what I want to talk to you, Govind, about Cloud Rewind. Can you tell us how you approach automated recovery with Cloud Rewind, and maybe also touch upon what could happen with drift or configuration drift more specifically, and why is it that you really have to have all of this information and then automate it to be successful?
Sure. So when you think about an application environment, particularly a distributed cloud application environment, utilizing all kinds of services, knowing those services, knowing the configurations, knowing the metadata, and most importantly, knowing the dependencies between those services is very, very crucial. So the first thing that we do is to go and discover all those services and understand automatically the dependencies between those services that really make up the cloud distributed cloud application. The second thing that we do is to protect all those services in something called a cloud time machine, which has two different vaults. One vault protecting all the services and the configurations, and it does it continuously on a cloud time machine. The second one is the application data itself. The application data needs to be roughly in sync with cloud services protected and replicated as well, so that in the event of a failure, it could be any type of failure, cyber incident failure or other service failures, you can go back in time, or you can recover from the latest copy really, really quickly using something called recovery as code. And that's where the magic is, because if the system writes the code and brings up all that automation that you talked about, Christophe, to be able to understand the dependencies, understand the services that really make up a distributed application, that simplifies a lot of problems for the customers. And in the same sense, we are able to achieve a high availability, near high availability, using on-demand capabilities of AWS.
Well, thank you. I think that's absolutely critical, bearing in mind, again, that a lot of enterprises, a lot of companies globally actually have a vast majority of their business applications and operational systems in the cloud, and certainly a lot on AWS. That's absolutely critical. So what you're doing is essentially helping with RPO and RTO, good old RPOs and RTOs, easier said than done, and now, well, easier done with Cloud Rewind. So I'd like to take a step back, maybe talk a little bit about the market, and maybe Thomas, you can give me your perspective. There's been a lot of consolidation recently in the data protection market, and I'd like to call it now the cyber resilience market, really. What's your take? What advice would you have for customers and end users?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, consolidation that we're seeing in the market right now, that really validates that cyber resilience matters. And what we're delivering isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have. Secondly, we believe that there's kind of two different types of acquisitions. The first kind being those that look at technology, they look at talent-focused acquisitions, and they tend to bring lots of new capabilities. They accelerate time to market. They add breadth or maybe perhaps even more depth to the portfolio. All of the things that are really designed around adding value to customers. And that's what we did with our Clumio acquisition and with Appranix. And so far, the customer feedback has been fantastic. The second kind of acquisition, it tends to be more of a financially driven or customer acquisition type of acquisition. And so we don't really believe that approach is necessarily safer for customers and making them more resilient. So for example, when you have overlapping portfolios, it can create confusion, it can add to chaos, understanding what is there. And with rampant cyber attacks right now, chaos is really the last thing that customers are really looking for. So I would say our focus when we think about acquisitions, it's really on delivering simplicity and really delivering reliability without adding any of those operational burdens or confusion and chaos. We really want you to be cyber resilient without compromise.
Good. So let me ask the next logical question, which is, well, I'm an end user, I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, well, what should I do next? What, in this context, what recommendations do you have? What steps should people take? What should they, and how should they evaluate the various offerings that are available to them in the market?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say organizations, they should prioritize stability, innovation, and customer centricity. If you're looking for cyber resilience, those are probably the three kind of key strategies that I would focus in on. But they should also ask about their cyber resilience vendor. Do they provide, of course, some level of breadth? Because it's important that you have lots of workload coverage, and we're seeing a lot of that with customers wanting to consolidate. And the safer and more secure you are, because again, these cyber attackers tend to live in the gaps between the solutions. But can your solution also go deep? And a good example of that is for customers that are leveraging AWS, do they trust their cyber resilience vendor to not only protect the data stored in AWS, but can they bring industry-leading capabilities for recovering data? Say Amazon S3. which many companies are relying on today to store their big AI and ML workloads. And we also have things like Appranix, where we get into the breadth of cloud applications. And with Clumio, our most recent acquisition, Backtrack, which we announced here at reInvent, we get a lot of depth in recovering S3 in ways that no other vendor can.
Yeah, it's definitely depth and breadth, and cyber resilience itself is also a team sport with other partnerships on the security side of the equation, networking, etc. So, Govind, I'm going to give you the last word, and with your words of wisdom, what recommendations do you have for our viewers?
Protect the resources that really make up your cloud applications properly, because in the event of a failure, you might even lose your cloud account. And you'll have to really think about what is cyber resilient structure for you, the posture for you, right? Protect all the resources properly, protect the data, of course, along with those resources roughly in sync, so that in the event of a failure, you are in a position to not only recover, but in the worst case scenario, you can rebuild. So we have really introduced that capability in the market, not just backup, restore, recovery. We have literally created the idea of rebuild. And that's not possible in the market today.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank
Christophe.
you.
And to our viewers, thank you very much for your time. My name is Christophe Bertrand. I'm a principal analyst at theCUBE Research, and this was our continuing coverage of AWS reInvent. Thank you very much, everyone.